Welcome to another video from Dr. Lock. The other day I showed you I've been cutting up a whole heap of keys for an apartment block, and we've got 7 or 8 doors there, and basically they want each door to be different. So we've cut different keys for each door, and we've written out our pinning chart, and we'll go through and we'll pin them up. So basically what the request was to make all the keys, make each block different, so building 1 can't operate building 2, etc. But then we've gone one step further. Whenever designing master keying, a lot of people know that you've actually got to allow for expansion, so always put in an extra 30%. So when we were adding up and doing all the numbers, we basically allowed for a few more buildings to be added without any big problems in the future. One other thing we're doing here is we're going to be introducing a master key. Although it wasn't requested at the time, I know one day the cleaner or the manager is going to want a master key for all the buildings. So putting it in now is definitely going to save us a lot of time and a lot of trouble in the future, should they want it. And if they want it later on, we can charge for that extra work we've already put in. Because if we had to put it in at a later stage, we'd have to strip down all the locks and redo it, and the codes that we've issued might not be compatible with one another. So it's better to do it from the start, allow for expansion and allow for future problems or future requests. So the cylinders I'm using today are the 530 Lockwood style cylinder. This is from a key and knob, and we're using the brand Locktron. Sounds like something really exciting from the Tron movie, but it's not. So to rekey these ones, they've got the new well, to start with, the building already had cylinders on, and being a locksmith we want to maximise our profits and keep our quotes down so we get the work. But on this particular building, I thought since the locks are so old, it's probably better that we just go for new cylinders, as the old cylinders have a real sloppy keyway. So no matter what we do, even if we do our work really well, it's going to be so sloppy that it's not going to be desirable. Starting off with a new cylinder is definitely the right thing to do, because at least then everything should be to spec and not give us much trouble. So all the keys are cut by us to start with. A lot of people do get keys cut at a later stage, but that's up to them. If their keys don't work, they don't work. But as long as they get a good accurate key, it should work. These are a 6-pin cylinder here. As you can tell by the keys, there's actually 6 cuts. First couple of cuts are zeros, so they don't appear on the key, but there is actually 6 pins and 6 cuts on this key. To remove this, well, to get this cylinder into a stage where we can rekey it, I'm going to be putting a pick just at the back of it, just like so, and I'm just going to use a little flat blade, and I'm going to make sure that circlip doesn't go flying. So I use the pick to stop the circlip from moving or rotating, and then I just use my little flat blade and just give it a slight push until it's at the stage now where it's sort of half off. As you can see there, take that out and use that flat blade once again just to give it a little bit of a encouragement, and now that's off. Okay, so rekeying a 570 is just like any other cylinder. You need a follower. And for this first example here, I haven't done it very well, but basically our first key is 00136. The next change key, that's our master key, so our change key is 23136. So there's only 2 chambers there which are different. So to make these 2 keys work, in the first chamber we're going to be installing a 0 and then a 2 master pin, second chamber 0, 3 master pin, the third chamber a 1, fourth a 3, and fifth a 6. Sixth chamber we're going to remove completely because it's not going to be needed in a 5-pin system. So we put our keys in, we give it a slight turn. Notice how I'm turning it only to the point where it can be followed on, the pins will be followed on by the rest of the cylinder plug there. If I was to turn it too much and I put my follower behind it, what would actually happen is the pins would get stuck. I might actually zoom in for this part here so you can actually see it. Okay, so that's pretty good. Alright, so I put my key in, I turn it, I rotate it to a point so that now my pins will be travelling on this top edge right here, and then I get my follower and I make sure that top edge is there and I slide it all the way through. Then I get my my pin catcher. Now it's a really good idea to do this as soon as you can, and that's to dump that last 6th chamber, because everybody seems to forget. Where's my tweezers? So we're going to go in the side we came out. So I'm just basically removing that last pin, if you can see that. So I let it drop and I let the spring, checking the spring is out. Now the magic can happen. So I know the first pin we want is the lowest cut, which is a 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in the first one. Next one is a 0. third one is a 1, and fourth a 3, and then a 6 after that. And I'm running real low on 6s. I'll have to get some more 6s for the next few cylinders. Now so far we have one key combination which will actually work. There is a lot of different ways to do master keying, and I'm not following all of the rules here, but it is just a simple odd even type master key system, so I'm not too worried. So here's our master key here, indicated by the MK on the tag. Now that key there is ready to work. All the pins are flat and they will work in the cylinder. Just to prove my point, let's slide it back and show you. So now I'm sliding it back. Can you see that follower right there? We may have to make sure that those pins stay right on that top edge, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble and have to re-top pin it. Okay, so now it's back together, turning, nice and smooth. So now, I'll do this side now because it's easier. Now I want to make the building key number 1 work, so I get my building key number 1. Now I've already done this on the numbers on this chart right here, so it's fairly straightforward. I've only got to drop in 2 master pins. In the first chamber here we need a number 2, so drop one of them in. Make sure your master pins sit flush. Sometimes the 3s and the 4s can get a little stuck. Okay, and on the second chamber I need to drop in a 3. So what's happening now is that my key can now achieve 2 different combinations. There we go, that one got a bit stuck. It can achieve my change key number 1, and it can also achieve my change key, my master key. Okay, and one of the things with this master key is that the change key is lower than the master key, so you can never cut your change key down to equal a master key. So now all the pins are in there. I could actually put my key in there. It's a good idea to put your key in there when you slide it back, because if something's wrong you can see it straight away, and it'll give you a chance to be able to pull the cylinder apart again. So now everything's lined up really well. I'm going to slide that in, give it a test, and that's working well. And checking our master key, it's beautiful. Checking our change key, it's beautiful. I don't know how come it worked smoothly the first time round. Maybe I just too busy talking, didn't pay enough attention. Okay, so now the circlip's on like so. As you can see, I'm just going to use my needle nose pliers and pull it together. Now I test my key one more time. Yes. The master key, yes. And using a selfie texter, I'm going to give it a mark here. Number 1. Number 1. If one mark rubs off, the other one's still going to be there. Now I know exactly where this cylinder's going to go. It's going to go in the first building, and that one is done. I can now go through and test all the keys I'm going to issue to the building. Unfortunately, that's a really boring part because I've got 50 keys actually to test. And the way I like to do that is just simply like this. I get myself one of these trays here and take the keys out of the bag. And you can actually stretch these bags just enough to get them on the end here. I could actually cut down the corners on this tray to make it a little bit easier, but I've just been lazy and haven't bothered really doing that. So now I've got the bag over the edge. I can put it on a slight angle like this. See, the problem is if I don't test every key, and if they go out there and they get issued or posted out or sent out, by the time they're issued, if they find out they don't work and then they report it back to the Strata and then they report it back to me, it's a whole heap of mucking around and it doesn't look professional. So it's easy. We got the right block here. Oh, no, we don't. Wrong block. That's okay. It'll only take me 1 second just to put all these back in. I'm gonna have to cut down these edges. They take too long. Okay, here we go. 50 keys back in the bag like that. No trouble. Oh, there's my good tweezers. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's try that again. Now don't worry, I'm not going to keep you waiting on the line while I count 50 keys. I'm just giving you a quick example of how I do it. Certain people do it certain ways, but okay, I'm going to cut this one down so the bag goes on there easier. Either that or I'm going to get a bigger bag. And like most locksmiths, we get a lot of them. So, okay, key number 1. So I put it in, I just give it a slight turn. The way I'm turning it, I'll do it here. The way I'm turning is I'm just popping it in and just testing that 12 o'clock position. So I'm going to 1 o'clock, back to 11, back to 1, and then just pulling it out. And it's giving me a little bit of resistance on coming out. which is not a good thing because the ramps here might be a little bit too sharp. Just looking at them, they look okay. Test that again. Okay, maybe it was just the way I was holding it, but it seems to be working quite nicely now, so I'm happy with that. That's 1, 2, and it goes on like this. This is probably a good job for an apprentice. Make sure it's all ready to go. Nobody likes testing keys, but unfortunately if you don't test your keys and you issue them and they don't work, or you've had a bit of swarf behind one of the keys when you cut them, which is very common, or you've loaded the key into the jaw wrongly, it's going to give a miscut, and then it's not going to be very professional when you give them to the client. So unfortunately having to go through is a bit of a pain in the bum, but it does make you look like a better locksmith when everything works, and you can guarantee it. Although these were cut on a automatic code machine, it is better to check them. To increase the speed on the key cutting, we also use an automatic duplicator, Silka Poker. So sometimes you can get the key worn down a little bit because it's actually tracing one key all the time, and the tracer goes over and over and can wear the original down. So it is better to check. Okay, so that's a simple master key system we're doing on a LW or C4 profile or LW5 profile, and I've got a few more cylinders to make up. Then I'll hopefully put them in a few days, and it'll all be ready to go. So that's matching 2 keys to 1 cylinder, and just basically giving you a quick look at these Locktron cylinders. It was my mistake, I put it in the wrong way, I wasn't concentrating, and that's kind of how we do it. Okay, thanks for watching.